What happens when the truth becomes a weapon, and the system sworn to protect you turns against you? How does a single mother with no power, no allies, and no way out fight against a courtroom rigged to see her fall? In a city where justice is bought, and innocence is irrelevant, one woman is thrown into a nightmare she didn't see coming, a trap woven by powerful men desperate to bury their secrets. But behind every forged document, every twisted lie, someone is watching. And a reckoning is coming. The question is, who will fall first? Stay with me, the facade is about to crack wide open. The cold air inside the courtroom felt thicker than stone, pressing against Ivy Quinn's chest like a vice. She stood alone before the bench, her hands trembling at her sides, knuckles pale, but her spine held straight. In the back of the room, whispers rose like static, judgment without trial, eyes filled with disdain. Her heart pounded like a war drum. She could barely breathe. Across from her, Judge Henry Calloway leaned back in his high-backed chair, fingers laced beneath his chin, silver hair slicked back, a thin smile playing on his lips, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. His gaze slid over Ivy like she was nothing but dust underfoot. "Miss Quinn," he drawled, voice soaked in mockery, "you stand accused of fraud, embezzlement, and breach of contract in connection with Crestview Bank. How do you plead?" Ivy's mouth was dry, but her voice did not waver. "Not guilty." Laughter rippled through the room, quiet, but cruel. Ivy didn't flinch. She had no lawyer beside her, no hand to hold, no one to shield her from the storm. All she had was the truth, and even that felt like a flickering flame in a hurricane. Judge Calloway raised an eyebrow. No legal counsel. Bold. But foolish. His gavel came down with a snap. The prosecution will proceed. As the charges echoed through the room, Ivy stared straight ahead, forcing herself to breathe, to think. Every word was a knife, $85,000 embezzled, unauthorized access to client funds, breach of fiduciary duty. None of it was real. None of it made sense. But here she was, fighting for her life. In that moment, Ivy couldn't see the agents watching from the shadows, couldn't hear the gears turning in a quiet corner of the federal government. She didn't know about the months of surveillance, the secret files, the listening devices planted in Judge Calloway's chambers. She didn't know that the men who trapped her were already under the scope of something far bigger. The walls were closing in. For all of them. Ivy Quinn woke before the alarm, her eyes snapping open in the dim light of dawn, heart already pounding for reasons she couldn't name. A heaviness sat in her chest, a weight she couldn't shake, like something was about to go terribly wrong. She forced a breath, rolled out of bed, and moved through her tiny apartment with mechanical focus. The smell of coffee, the soft hum of the old refrigerator, the sound of her daughter's footsteps, all so normal, so fragile. "Morning, Mommy," Ava Quinn chirped, her 6-year-old smile lighting up the kitchen. "Morning, baby," Ivy said softly, brushing hair from her daughter's face. "Pancakes today. With blueberries." Ivy smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. As she flipped the pancakes, the knock came, loud, abrupt, like a warning. At the door stood her landlord, face pinched, holding an envelope. No greeting. No warmth. "Notice to vacate," he said flatly, shoving the paper into her hand. "What?" "That's impossible. I paid this month, early. Not according to the books. You're 30 days overdue. You've got a week." "That's a lie. I have the receipts. Take it up with management. My hands are tied." He walked away without another word. Ivy stood in the doorway, heart pounding, the paper shaking in her hand. She didn't even have time to process it before the second blow came. At work, Crestview Bank felt colder than usual. Eyes followed her. Whispers stopped when she passed. Her manager, Karen, summoned her into the office with a single line. "We need to talk." The meeting was short, brutal. "Ivy, funds have gone missing from multiple accounts you had access to." "What? That's not possible. I never. The audit says otherwise. Security footage, login records, it all points to you." "That's not true. I've never." "You're terminated, effective immediately. HR will escort you out." Ivy couldn't breathe. It felt like her world was being stripped away piece by piece, with surgical precision. Her phone buzzed. A notification. A letter of summons. To court. No postmark. No sender. Just a date. Tomorrow. Fraud. Embezzlement. Breach of contract. Her blood ran cold. What the hell is happening? Nothing made sense. She had done nothing wrong. But the walls were closing in, fast. Ivy clutched the paper, her hands numb. She wasn't just under attack. She was being hunted. The courtroom was a cage. Ivy stood in the center, alone, her breath catching in her throat as the clerk read her name into the record. There was no defense table filled with legal support, no attorney whispering strategies. Just her. A single mother staring down a system designed to crush people like her. Judge Henry Calloway loomed from the bench, robe pristine, expression bored, as if he'd already decided her fate, and was simply going through the motions. "Ms. Quinn," he said, his voice syrupy and cold, "do you have legal representation today?" Ivy raised her chin. "No, Your Honor. I'll be representing myself." A murmur rippled through the room. Calloway arched an eyebrow. "Well then, let's hope your grasp of the law is better than your grasp of banking ethics." She said nothing, her knuckles white. Marcus Steele, the prosecutor, strode to the center of the room with a swagger that dripped arrogance. He flipped open a file, thick with lies. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, addressing the court, "the evidence is clear. Ivy Quinn embezzled $85,000 from Crestview Bank, exploiting her position and betraying the trust of her clients." Ivy's breath stopped. "That's not true," she whispered, "I didn't." Steele continued, voice rising. "Not only did she have access to sensitive accounts, but records show multiple unauthorized transfers, all traced back to her login credentials. This was not a mistake. This was calculated theft." Ivy shook her head, heart hammering. "I never had access to those accounts. I couldn't have. The evidence says otherwise." Steele shot her a look, smug and victorious. Calloway tapped his gavel once. "Enough," he said. "Ms. Quinn, given the severity of the charges and the risk of flight, bail is set at $50,000. Ivy's knees nearly gave out. "I can't pay that," she said hoarsely. "Please, I have a daughter." Calloway didn't blink. "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before stealing from innocent people." He struck the gavel. Remanded into custody until trial. That night, in the holding cell, Ivy sat on a cold metal bench, hands wrapped around herself, shaking, not from fear, but from rage. Somewhere above, laughter echoed through the courthouse hallway. She pressed herself against the bars, straining to hear. Two voices. Marcus Steele. Judge Calloway. "She folded faster than I thought," Steele chuckled. "Did you see her face? Like a scared rabbit." "She's done," Calloway replied, voice dripping with venom. "By the time I'm through, she'll be lucky to see sunlight again." They laughed. And in that moment, Ivy understood. This wasn't a trial. It was an execution, without bullets. The cell was silent, except for the constant hum of flickering fluorescent lights, and the occasional clang of steel doors. Ivy sat alone, knees drawn up, arms wrapped tight around herself, not from cold, but from the pressure building in her chest. Sleep wouldn't come. It couldn't. Her mind was racing, through memories, through questions, through the gut punch of betrayal that still lingered like poison in her veins. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She began retracing her steps, not just the last few days, but the months before everything fell apart. Crestview Bank. She'd worked there for over a year. Entry-level position. No access to high-level accounts. No authority to move money. Strict logins. Multiple approvals needed for transfers. So how did my name end up on records I couldn't even touch? Then there was Judge Calloway, smug, untouchable. A man with power, reputation, and a reputation for burying those who challenged him. She'd heard whispers, rumors among other staff, that he'd been accused of rigging verdicts, but every investigation mysteriously vanished before reaching court. Nothing ever stuck. And then, Richard Langston, the elusive CEO of Crestview Bank. Wealthy. Connected. Practically a ghost. Ivy had seen him only once, from a distance. People spoke of him in hushed tones. Langston ran the show from behind glass doors, his name stamped on every policy. She thought back to the morning it all started, the eviction notice, the firing, the court summons. All within hours. Too fast. Too precise. No coincidences. Someone wanted me out of the picture, fast. Suddenly, the scattered pieces began to align. Langston. Calloway. Steele. 3 powerful men. 1 fabricated case. And her, the perfect scapegoat. Low-level employee. No legal team. Single mother. Easy to discredit. Easy to silence. Ivy's heart pounded harder. They needed someone to take the fall for that missing money. And they chose her. Her fists clenched. But if they thought she would break, they had underestimated the wrong woman. The jail door slammed shut behind her, but this time Ivy didn't feel alone. Something had changed. Someone had seen the cracks, and they were coming. The first sign came right after her bail hearing, as Ivy was being led from the courtroom in cuffs. A woman in the gallery locked eyes with her, not with pity, but with focus. Intense. Calculating. A storm behind sharp blue eyes. Later that night, Ivy was pulled into a room, small, sterile, guarded. And there she was again. Claire Donovan. "I'm not here for a soundbite," Claire said, flipping open a folder. "I'm here because I think you're being set up." Ivy narrowed her eyes. "Everyone thinks I'm guilty. I don't." Claire slid a photo across the table, a blurred image of Judge Calloway entering a private club known for backdoor deals. "I've been tracking him for over a year. The man's untouchable, or so he thinks. You're not the first he's buried." Ivy stared at the photo, adrenaline spiking. "Then why me?" Claire hesitated, then leaned in. "Because you were convenient. Because Richard Langston needed someone to take the fall." The name hit like a hammer. Claire nodded. "And you're not the only one watching him." The next day, in a nondescript building miles from the courtroom, Agent Adam Foster sat in front of a monitor, Ivy's mugshot on the screen. He sipped black coffee, eyes never leaving the case files. "Langston moved too fast," he muttered. "Sloppy." For months, Foster had been chasing rumors of money laundering, bribery, judicial corruption, all leading back to Langston and Calloway. But the evidence was always just out of reach. Until now. "This girl. She's the thread," he said aloud. "We pull her case apart, everything else unravels." 2 nights later, Claire received an anonymous message, "Meet me. Midnight." No cops. She arrived at the deserted park to find a young man pacing, eyes darting nervously. Tyler Grayson, a junior employee at Crestview Bank, Ivy's former co-worker. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "If Langston finds out." "He won't. Just talk." Tyler swallowed hard and handed over a flash drive. They faked everything. The transfer logs, the security footage. They pinned it all on her. "I've seen the original files." They scrubbed them and replaced them with fakes. Claire's pulse quickened. Why? Because Langston stole that money. And Calloway's protecting him. Ivy's just a name they could burn. Back in FBI headquarters, Foster studied the drive. "This is it," he whispered. "This is enough to blow them wide open." But then came the bombshell. A message from the courthouse. Trial date moved up. Judge Calloway has pushed for expedited proceedings. Foster stood abruptly. "Damn it. They are trying to shut it down before we can act." Ivy Quinn was running out of time. But now, she wasn't alone. And the system wasn't as bulletproof as they thought. The clock was ticking, loud, relentless, and unforgiving. Ivy sat in the cramped office of Monica Blake, a defense attorney with a reputation for taking on the impossible and winning. Her sharp eyes scanned documents while Ivy clutched a cup of coffee with trembling hands. "I don't have time to breathe, let alone fight this," Ivy murmured, her voice thin. "They've already decided I'm guilty." Monica looked up, eyes hard with resolve. "Then we have to give them no choice but to see the truth." Papers littered the desk. Tyler Grayson's flash drive had exposed cracks in Langston's carefully constructed lies, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Then came the bombshell, a leaked internal email, buried deep in the bank's servers. Claire Donovan had risked everything to retrieve it. Monica read it aloud, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Find a low-level employee. Pin it all on her. We'll walk away clean." Silence. Then Ivy's breath hitched. "They really said that? They planned it? Word for word?" Monica nodded. "This is our bullet. But we still need someone to fire it." Meanwhile, Claire stood outside Tyler Grayson's apartment, knocking with increasing urgency. He opened the door, pale and anxious, eyes darting around the hallway like a hunted animal. "I can't testify," he said before she could speak. "Langston knows I talked to you. He threatened my sister. My job's gone. My life's hanging by a thread." Claire's voice softened, but her words were laced with fire. "And what about Ivy? Her daughter? They're going to destroy her. Tyler, you're the only one who can stop it." Tyler's lips trembled. "They'll kill me. Then make sure they go down before they get the chance." Back at the FBI, Adam Foster's frustration was reaching a boiling point. Red tape, stalled approvals, and missing files. Someone on the inside was sabotaging the case. "They are protecting Calloway," he spat. "Somebody's covering his tracks. I need warrants, I need backup, and I'm getting stonewalled by my own people." His partner frowned. "Langston's got deep pockets. Calloway's got influence. If we don't move now." "I know," Foster growled. "Ivy Quinn goes to prison, and we lose everything." He slammed his fist on the desk and reached for the phone. "No more waiting. We're going around them." The next morning, Ivy looked out the window of Monica's office, watching as the city woke up, unaware of the war raging beneath the surface. She thought of Ava's laughter, the way her daughter clung to her, still believing in her mother's strength. But Ivy felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath her. You still with me?" Monica asked, standing by the door. Ivy turned, her voice steady for the first time in days. "Let's bring them down." Time was running out. And the battle was about to begin. The courtroom was suffocating. Ivy stood at the defense table, hands clenched tightly together, trying to keep her composure. Ava's face flickered in her mind, a tiny beacon in the storm. Judge Henry Calloway took his seat, his robe flowing like a black shroud. His smirk was barely concealed as he adjusted his glasses and glanced down at Ivy, a predator savoring the kill. "Miss Quinn," he drawled, "are you prepared to finally accept responsibility for your actions?" Ivy didn't respond. She didn't need to. Monica Blake stood beside her, face calm, but eyes blazing. Across the aisle, Marcus Steele rose, his voice dripping with arrogance. "The prosecution is ready to present its final arguments. Ms. Quinn embezzled $85,000 from Crestview Bank. The evidence is irrefutable." Then, everything changed. The doors to the courtroom burst open. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as 2 FBI agents strode in, led by Agent Adam Foster, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Your Honor," Foster's voice cut through the tension, "I have new evidence that demands immediate attention." Calloway's face twitched. "This is highly irregular." "And yet," Monica interrupted coldly, "necessary for the pursuit of truth." Foster handed a thick file to the bailiff. The judge hesitated, then reluctantly waved for the clerk to read the contents. Exhibit A, bank transaction logs tracing the embezzled funds directly to accounts owned by Richard Langston. "Not Ivy Quinn." Gasps echoed. Ivy's heart pounded like a war drum. Exhibit B, internal messages between Judge Calloway and Richard Langston discussing a plan to bury Ivy Quinn beneath the charges. Calloway's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. His smirk was gone. Exhibit C, Foster continued, security footage from Crestview Bank, time-stamped to the fraudulent transaction. Ivy Quinn is not present, nor did she have access at the time. Calloway stood abruptly. "This is a violation of procedure. This evidence should have been disclosed earlier." Foster stepped forward, voice like thunder. "It was withheld by individuals in your circle of influence. We have reason to believe you attempted to suppress this investigation." The courtroom fell silent as footsteps echoed from the back. Tyler Grayson walked in, visibly shaking, but standing tall. He took the witness stand, eyes locked on Calloway. "I have something to say," Tyler announced, voice cracking. "I was part of the team that falsified Ivy Quinn's records under orders from Richard Langston." Judge Calloway knew. He approved it. A collective gasp filled the room. Calloway's face turned pale. "Lies!" Calloway barked. "This is hearsay, he's trying to save himself." Foster pulled a final document from his folder. "We have signed affidavits and corroborating data." "And Judge Calloway." He turned to the bailiff. "We have a federal arrest warrant." Stunned silence. The bailiff approached the bench. Calloway stepped back, eyes wide. "You can't do this." "Judge Henry Calloway, you are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and corruption. Place your hands where I can see them." The sound of handcuffs snapping shut echoed like a gunshot. Ivy stared in disbelief as Calloway was led away, the courtroom in uproar. Justice, at last, had arrived. The courtroom remained frozen in shock, eyes locked on the man who had once ruled this very space like a tyrant. Judge Henry Calloway, wrists shackled in cold steel, stumbled as agents escorted him past the crowd. Gasps. Murmurs. Then, silence. Ivy stood still, numb, watching the man who had nearly destroyed her life being dragged out under the same law he had twisted for years. Claire Donovan's voice pierced the stillness. History just happened in this room. Monica Blake turned to Ivy, her expression softening. It's over, Ivy. You're free. But the reckoning wasn't done. At that very hour, across the city, Richard Langston frantically rifled through files in his corner office at Crestview Bank. Paper shredded, digital drives erased, documents burned. He was desperate, sweating through his suit. Then came the pounding on the glass doors. FBI. Open up. Langston turned, face contorted in panic, just as agents stormed in. One swept the half-burnt files from his desk. Another secured his wrists in cuffs. You can't prove anything. Langston spat. Agent Adam Foster stepped forward, holding the recovered flash drive. We don't need to. You already did. Back in court, Ivy stood as the judge, a new, impartial judge, addressed the jury. After reviewing the evidence and in light of the testimony provided, this court finds Ivy Quinn not guilty on all charges. The words crashed over her like a wave. Ivy's knees nearly gave out, but Monica caught her, tears glistening in both their eyes. From the back of the courtroom came a cry, "Mommy." Ava Quinn sprinted down the aisle, her little arms flinging around her mother's waist. Ivy collapsed to her knees, holding Ava tight, sobbing into her daughter's hair. I told you, baby. I told you I'd come home. Ava's voice trembled. They said you'd be gone forever. Ivy kissed her forehead, eyes blazing with newfound strength. Not a chance. Marcus Steele, the once untouchable prosecutor, sat pale-faced as agents approached his table. The weight of an impending investigation pressed down on him, false prosecution, abuse of power. His career was crumbling. Justice didn't stop at Callaway or Langston. The system had turned its eye inward, and Steele was next. As Ivy walked out of the courthouse, sunlight warmed her face for the first time in weeks. The cameras flashed. Reporters shouted her name. But she didn't stop. She had her daughter in her arms, and the world could wait. The fall was swift. The reckoning, absolute. Judge Henry Callaway, once the untouchable hand of justice, now sat in an orange jumpsuit behind bars, his legacy in ashes. The gavel he once wielded had been replaced by cold steel bars. The final sentence, 25 years in federal prison for corruption, civil rights violations, and obstruction of justice. Inmates whispered as he passed, the irony not lost on anyone. He had sent hundreds behind bars. Now, he was one of them. Richard Langston, the architect of the scheme, faced a darker fate. Prosecutors hit him with a laundry list of charges: financial fraud, conspiracy, tampering with evidence, and witness intimidation. The sheer scale of his crimes made national headlines. A single headline burned across news networks. Langston faces life in prison for banking fraud scandal. But while justice crushed the corrupt, Ivy Quinn's life had only just begun to heal. Weeks later, standing in the same courtroom where she was nearly broken, Ivy faced the Crestview Bank legal team, not as a defendant, but as a plaintiff. Monica Blake stood beside her as the judge read the verdict. The court awards Ivy Quinn compensatory and punitive damages, totaling $8.5 million. The room erupted in murmurs. Ivy remained still, only her fingers tightening around Ava's small hand. She didn't just win for herself. She won for everyone who had ever been silenced, cornered, crushed by the weight of injustice. With the settlement, Ivy did something no one expected. She declined luxury, fame, and the fleeting comfort of wealth. Instead, she launched the Quinn Foundation, a legal aid fund dedicated to helping the falsely accused, to fighting wrongful convictions, and to taking on the very system that had tried to destroy her. No one should fight alone, she told reporters. I didn't have help, until someone dared to believe in me. Now, I'm going to be that person for others." News outlets everywhere carried her story. Single mom takes down corrupt judge and wins big. Ivy Quinn, from defendant to defender of justice. The world watched as a once-forgotten woman became a symbol of resistance. Ivy's face was no longer filled with fear, but fire. Her battle was over. But her war for others had just begun. 1 year later, the courthouse loomed ahead, unchanged in stone and steel, but for Ivy Quinn, it was no longer a place of fear. She stood at the foot of its steps, eyes lifted, the autumn wind weaving through her hair like a silent witness to all that had passed. She had once walked through those heavy doors alone, terrified, betrayed. Today, she stood tall, vindicated. Ivy's gaze swept the entrance, now bustling with reporters, lawyers, citizens chasing some version of justice. But her mind drifted back to that day, the weight of silence, the cold stares, and most of all, his smile. Judge Henry Calloway. His face had been carved in arrogance, lips curled in a sneer as he pronounced her fate like a death sentence. She could still hear the gavel. Feel the tremor in her chest. Now? He sat behind bars, just another man brought low by his own sins. His smirk was gone, his power stripped, his name forever etched into history for all the wrong reasons. Ivy took a breath, her voice calm, but sharp as glass. Justice doesn't come all at once. Her words echoed in the cool air, drawing the attention of passers-by. She stepped closer to the courthouse steps, eyes shining with purpose. But when the truth rises, when it finally breaks through the lies, there is no force on earth that can stop it. She smiled, not with bitterness, but with strength. And turned away, walking into a future she had carved with fire, pain, and unbreakable resolve. The truth had freed her. Now, it would free others.